Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I'm back in the office after a very crazy summer of planning meetings and speaking at different events. And I think this is like the third time I'm on here by myself for a couple of weeks, which is fine. I love it. But so what today is going to do is kind of go through some headlines that I've seen in the news while traveling that really kind of impact us as meeting professionals and potentially could have impact on us, on our meetings and events, and that we need to pay attention to see the intricacies of what these different cases or these different stories are going to impact us on our events. So let's start with the one that I posted last week. So this is the case where Walt Disney, a doctor, last October of 2023 went to Disney Springs for dinner with her husband and her mom. And they had done all the research in advance to find out the venue, which restaurant they wanted to eat at, and which was Raglan Road. And they had their dinner. They went through all of the different scenarios, talking to the waiter, asking questions about all of the different meal options that she had. She was allergic to nuts as well as milk. And she was told by the server multiple times that her meal would be safe, that they had it documented that she was allergic and that they would do that. And 45 minutes later, after they had left the restaurant and went their separate ways, she and her mom went somewhere and her husband went another way. She passed out in one of the stores, and she administered epinephrine herself. And her husband was trying to call her, couldn't find her, and found out that she had passed away from an allergic reaction. And the coroner's report had said it was a high level of milk and nuts in her system, not just a small amount, but a high level. And the news that hit the papers last week, actually, let's see what day this was. It doesn't say the date on here. Hello, Aaron, Tracy, and hello, Paul. They're joining me on Instagram. So nice to see you both here. And so February 26th, this is the story that the doctor died of the allergic reaction. Well, I need to actually find the story that last week, I'm going to look it up on LinkedIn to just show you the story that I shared. So her husband filed a wrongful death claim in February of last year, and saying they failed to follow procedures, and his wife died of an allergic reaction from the milk. And the inquest from the coroner did say it was, as I said, a higher level of allergies. And Disney then came back and said that he had signed up for a free trial of Disney Plus 4 years prior, that he was not in that terms and conditions of that Disney Plus free trial, that he was not allowed to sue. And so they were using a claim that from a 4-year-old different situation, Disney Plus subscription, he was not allowed to sue Disney as a result. Well, just yesterday or the day before, and here we go, Disney drops its bid to have an allergy death lawsuit because plaintiffs signed up for the Disney Plus subscription. So thankfully, and what happened is there was a lot of activism around this situation. And I shared Natasha Allergy Research Foundation's post they're in the UK, and they posted the story, and it got a lot of coverage across the globe because of that. And so, as I just said, Disney has dropped its bid to have allergy death lawsuit tossed because the plaintiff signed up for Disney Plus. And in the AP story, I think that this is the AP story. At Disney, we strive to put humanity above all other considerations. Right here, he said, this is Josh DeMara, the chairperson of Disney's theme park division. Which, with such unique circumstances as the ones in this case, we believe the situation warrants a sensitive approach to expedite a resolution for the family who have experienced such a painful loss. And I'm bringing this story to you because one of the stories I also read, was in April of this year after the Heather's. Thank you, Heather, for popping in here. She said, you cannot disclaim or weigh liability for safety. Yes, exactly. In February, I think, so the claim was filed in January or February. And I'm going to preface this. I am not an attorney. I am just reading the headlines and putting my perspective on this as an event planner who advocates for safe, inclusive food and beverage experiences at events. So hello, Erin, who's joined as well on Instagram. It was filed in January, February timeframe. And then in April, I also read that Disney had said, well, we're just the landlord. We don't have any control over the restaurant's policies and procedures and how they handle food allergies or food safety in their kitchens. I don't know a lot about what Disney has to say about what happens in there, but I do know from using an event venue on Disney Springs earlier this year, that catering manager said to me, well, we have a huge composting program that's run through Disney. So I know that there is some information that is tied to Disney when you even though they're the landlord, they have guidelines on how they do things. It's also on a Disney Springs property, even though they're the landlord, they do have really good allergy policies on the Disney properties in general. So the way I see this tying into the meetings industry is that we have hotel chains out there that franchise owners, i.e. kind of like this restaurant, leases the name to put on on their hotel. And it could be a Marriott, it could be a Hyatt, it could be a Hilton. They lease that name to put on their property. So whatever kind of hotel it is. So they own that building and they're leasing that name. But there's also another management company, a different management company on there. So if this food allergy reaction had happened at an event that was in XYZ hotel, this woman's husband could actually, to me, look at it from the perspective of, okay, here's the ownership. And Joan Eisenstadt, if you're listening to me anywhere here, hello, Dairy Allergy Dad, who's joined on Instagram as well, thinking about how Joan, and I bring up Joan Eisenstadt because she's always pushing this and emphasizing us to do this, is that even though it may have one of those hotel chains names on the hotel, right? We need to find out who's the owner and the management company of that hotel so that when we're contracting that hotel for an event, that everyone is included in that contract. I'm going to say named in that contract so that and I don't want to say in terms of liability, but it is in terms of liability. If anything goes wrong with that contract, we want to make sure that we have everybody's names who are associated with that property are included in that and adhere to what that contract terms are. So again, tying this back to the meetings industry. So if I'm a meeting planner contracting an event at XYZ hotel, I want to make sure that the hotel's name is in that contract, but I also want to make sure that the management company and the owner of that hotel is named in that contract so that everybody's included. So if this allergy reaction and this fatality from an allergy reaction occurred at your event, what would you do? Who would you seek justice through, right? Or name in your lawsuit, in your wrongful death lawsuit? But to me, it also puts that on to the meeting planner. How are we, and the event host? If we're asking the question and we're communicating that information to these hotels and to these catering companies, where does your liability come in there? And again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm just helping you think through some of these things and how we need to be paying attention to this case that is now going to go to court. And what are those implications that it could potentially have on us, right? She shared her information with the server that she had severe nut allergy, that she had severe milk allergy. And when we're telling that, when one of our attendees is telling that to one of our servers, and that server is taking it back to the kitchen to find that meal, where are the lines of communication? And to me, this is really, again, really important for us to follow because it really reiterates the importance of safety. And it reiterates the importance of managing food allergies in the kitchen. I know that no hotel is going to be 100% allergen free or it's 100% gluten free. I understand that. But having gone through food service training as well, I'm going to take this off here real quick. We do have a responsibility for that. And which brings me to, I've got one other story about food allergies that I want to bring up, but it brings me to an email that I got from a client or a friend. And in her hotel contract that she's negotiating right now, it says, other than specifically stated in the approved menu or otherwise agreed in a separate writing signed by the group, the meeting planner, and the event host, and the catering representative from the hotel will not be responsible for any specific dietary requests or requirements. So the hotel is then coming out and saying, we're not responsible for any specific dietary requests or requirements unless it's agreed to, it's already stated in the approved menu. And so my question to this meeting planner is, and actually I didn't say this to her, but I'm going to now, is like, how is the menu already outlined? Is the menu identifying top allergens? Is the chef going to go through? What are their policies and procedures? What are their SOPs in how they manage allergens up front in the first place? And are they going to disclose all those allergens information before we actually come on property? So she reached out to ask how we could change that clause. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just stating some information that I think is relevant to this. And her rewrite of that clause was something to the fact that the group, she as the meeting planner and the organization will provide dietary restrictions disclosed by the attendees, and the hotel agrees to accommodate all dietary restrictions and food allergies as needed. I expanded on that a little bit when I gave her a suggestion back, because depending on where you are, what state, what country you are, the EU has a lot stricter policies around food allergy management. They require all unpackaged food to be labeled with the top 9 allergens or top 14 allergens that the EU regulates. And in the UK, there's a couple of stricter laws relating to food allergies, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But here in the United States, the U.S. Food Code was changed in 2022. And the food code said that unpackaged food be labeled with the top 9 allergens that the U.S. regulates, which is wheat, soy, tree nuts, peanuts, fish, shellfish, milk, egg, and sesame. So they're highly recommending that we label unpackaged foods. And I say that they recommend it because the food code is not law. It is a guideline for states and jurisdictions to use to define their own food code laws. And there are, I think it's 6 states that have adopted the U.S. food code as is. That's Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Mississippi, Colorado, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it's 4 states plus Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands that are adopting that as is. And so we need to be paying attention to that. So if you're doing an event in any of those states, you should be able to see how the food allergy labeling from those restaurants, those food service providers in those states. So my other comment back to this meeting planner around her contract was, okay, so what state are you having this event? What are the current food laws in that state? And then how many of the people who on the staff has had food allergy training? Because there are other states that have restrictions and guidelines, regulations and guidelines on food allergy safety. I did an event in Texas earlier this year, and we had somebody who was anaphylactic to nuts. And so I asked all nuts to be removed from our food and beverage options, that no nuts would be served on anything. And they said, well, hey, we're not a nut-free environment. And I, as well as that attendee, knew that and understood that. But I wanted to make sure that this hotel was following the new regulations that were coming through with the Sergio Lopez Food Allergy Awareness Act, and that all foods, which says that all food service organizations in the state of Texas and their employees actually have to go through food allergy training, and that posters have to be up to educate their staff on what food allergies are. So it took a little bit of maneuvering on that, and they agreed to label the food as I asked them to, as well as make sure working towards having all their staff go through a food allergy training. They didn't have to abide by it until September next month. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that they knew about that law coming through. So I think this will be probably one of the biggest cases that we will have seen as around food allergies as we're talking about it, that will impact the meetings industry. So I really want you to pay attention to it. The next case that I wanted to, or the next story ripped from the headlines that I wanted to bring up is this story. This is a young girl who died after drinking a hot chocolate at a Costa restaurant. And this happened in the UK. And from the court, they just did a coroner's inquest about it. And it says, as its headline says, failures led to the drink death. The mother, based on information that was disclosed in the court hearing about it, found that the assistant coroner, Radcliffe, had found that there had been failure of communication between the coffee shop staff and the mother of this 13-year-old. And the mother said there needs to be better awareness of the consequences that her daughter is no longer here. Let's see. Her mother said, having heard all the evidence over the last week, it's clear to me that food service industry and medical professionals are required to have allergy training. And this training is not taken seriously enough. And so what they had visited the Costa coffee shop in the UK and in Britain. And when she got to the dentist right after that, she abruptly got up and went to the toilet and shouted that this was not soy milk. So she has an allergy to milk, but it wasn't. They had asked for soy milk, and they had actually asked for the containers that the drink was made in to be washed out and cleaned before it actually was served to her. She actually went to the chemist, and they gave her a dose of epinephrine in her leg. This is kind of scary that there was a general shortage of EpiPens, and a customer in the store also had allergies and had an EpiPen. The postmortem examination triggered by hot chocolate that caused an allergic reaction. But the one thing about this that I wanted to point out is the inquest. They heard court evidence from the Costa staff about their training on food safety and allergens. Written evidence from Costa employees, one of whom said that employee themselves had failed the quiz on food allergies 20 times before passing. And another said their husband had accompanied them to work on their first day to help translate for them, and that they had to use Google Translate in helping them read English. So they were being provided a quiz in English, not their native language, that they had to take and pass, and they failed it. And so a regional operations manager for Costa said that the baristas were only permitted to serve customers, and you can see where I'm taking this across, who had an allergy when ordering, who had said they had an allergy in ordering. If they had completed a specific allergy safety training, they were allowed to serve those people. But so who knows? The training is only provided in English, and actually confirmed that as of February 2023, there is no requirement to complete the online modules in the presence of colleagues, as they could have done that at home. It is only provided in English with no other language options. And he had not been aware about how many times the training had attempted the quiz before they passed it. So really thinking through that, and I bring that to your attention because, again, I was chatting with a woman who worked at a convention center. She was a college student, and I don't think she was an intern, but maybe kind of a co-op job working at that convention center. But she said everybody in that convention center spoke Burmese. And when speaking to guests, they don't know how to speak. They don't speak English. So again, thinking about this situation, if somebody had asked for a milk and used soy milk, and we're doing beverages at our events, do you have a separate container or a separate piece of equipment that you're using it to make soy milk? These are the drinks with soy milk. These are the drinks. This is the container that's used to make the one with dairy milk. This is the one that's used to make the container with oat milk. That's a lot of pieces of equipment, but I'd rather have a lot of pieces of equipment than somebody potentially having a food allergic reaction to that situation. And so really thinking through this and how you do that and what is the communication method. And I've always recommended making sure, asking your hotels when you're signing a contract, who on your team has gone through food allergy safety? Who on your team manages the food allergy meals if there are personalized plates made? Who is doing that cross-reference? Who is doing that quality control of the meals when they go across? There is, bring up my keynote presentation real quick, that I was in an event earlier, it was actually last year, and the Temple Grandin was the speaker. So this is an event that I attended, and the breakfast meal was build your own biscuit with Kentucky pork sausage. So this is what was on the table in front of each of us, this pork option right here, right? And at the very bottom here, it says gluten-free biscuit option available upon request. So here's the biscuit that was in the basket that everyone was able to take from and make their own meal from. Well, this is what was presented to me when I actually asked for the gluten-free option. And I say this to you because at this event, Temple Grandin was the keynote speaker. She was talking about the need for managing details and how we need different people with different thought processes and skill sets to double check do quality control, basically, right? So they printed this menu and it says gluten-free biscuit available upon request, right? She said from the podium, if you're gonna tell me that there's a gluten-free biscuit, then you should give me a gluten-free biscuit, not this brown toast, right? And so that's where I'm looking at these ripped from the headline stories here, right? How can we make sure the quality control is happening and making sure that we are bringing this information together and having our food service companies really think through, and we as meeting professionals, but you as hotels and convention centers. I do not want someone to die on your watch. That is not my purpose of this. Or my purpose is that I don't want anybody to die on your watch. I want you to take food allergies seriously, and I don't want you to just skirt them, like I mentioned in that clause in a contract, right? Well, we're not responsible for any other food allergies unless they're completely disclaimed up front. Sorry, you've got training, you've got food allergy laws to follow through. So, and kind of following up on that same thing, this is Tanya, whose daughter Natasha died, and she has been asking, she's in the UK. I don't want that inquiry about underwear right there. Sorry, from Soma. She's asking for the UK to have a food allergies czar. But what she recently heard is that the government is too busy to appoint this food allergy czar. They've just had so many things that they're working on right now that they don't have the time to appoint somebody. And Tanya's daughter was 15 years old when she passed away from eating a sandwich that contained sesame. And so with this case of Hannah coming through, right, she was really pushing this to say, hey, what can we do? What can we do? Let's get somebody that's in charge of managing and overseeing how food allergies are labeled and regulated throughout the country. And they are regulated, but how seriously are they taken? And so that's just not really the right PR move or statement to say, I guess, hey, we're too busy to do this. We don't want people to go. We don't want people to die. That is our whole point in asking for food allergy laws. Okay, enough of that headline and food allergy management. I hope that you got my point in what I'm talking about here. I wanted to bring up this other story that I saw in the Washington Post this morning that really pertains to what food and beverage means. And this headline here from the Washington Post, a new loneliness cure, apps that match you with strangers for a meal. And it really made me think about what we're doing in our events, right? We're bringing people together for a common cause, whether it's a corporate meeting, whether it's an association. So everybody's there for a specific reason. But how can we use the meal functions that we're planning to help really engage these attendees? And I was astonished by how many apps that are out there are actually engaging people to have pairs, strangers seeking deep conversation for morning meals in 17 cities. I don't want to do that. How can we do the same thing, right? But we're not going to see Jerry Seinfeld. So it really was interesting what these conversations we're having, and I've talked about this before too, is that having a conversation over a meal, you are like this woman from Russia who was paired with a young Ukrainian woman, and they discussed the conflict between their two countries. And she was able to see a friend in me, even though I represent a nation that bombed her country and killed her friends. Like, that's what having a conversation over a meal can do, right? And so I just find it really fascinating that there's all these apps out there that are pairing people to having conversations over a meal. And the statistics in here, it says, and actually right here in July, the dating app Bumble, which also modes for networking and friend finding, completed an acquisition of an app designed to help people make new friends to spend time with off the line. And so I find that really fascinating that there's people setting up meals for breakfast, there's lunches and dinner, different apps to do that. So as a meeting professional, let's think through what we can do with that same kind of experience. Actually, it reminds me of the exhibitor show. Years ago, 20 years ago, I went to the exhibitor show for the first time, and they had on a wall, they had pieces of paper and it says dinner with strangers. And you could go and sign your name up. They had actually made reservations, exhibitor show had made reservations at 5 or 6 different restaurants. And you, for up to 10 people, and you went and wrote your name on and your cell phone number on underneath the name of the restaurant that you wanted to go to. And you were just supposed to meet those 10 people there at 6 o'clock or whenever to have dinner. They are still doing that. It's now digital on their event app, but they are still doing that. So how can you incorporate that kind of thing as well? Because think about all the people that come to your convention or your conference alone, right? And if you don't have an event planned that night, they're wandering the streets of whatever city you're in trying to have dinner. And sometimes it gets lonely. Sometimes we want to have dinner by ourselves because we were overstimulated by the number of people that are at our conference. But why not help them have dinner with a stranger and make a new friend? I think this is a really good story to look at. And this one right here from 2023 survey from the Pew Research found that urban residents worldwide are less likely to feel like they have local connections. 49% reported feeling close to people in their local community compared to 59% in the suburbs, and 58% in rural areas reported feeling that way. So then he talks about this gentleman, Raymond, who was having a hard time making new friends at 41 years old, moving to a new city. And he signed up and he worked late at night. And so he wanted to have lunch with people. And so he signed up to join the Creative Lunch Club for $11. And I'm not saying that you want to charge people when you're doing this at your event, but, an additional fee for setting up these reservations. But I think it's a great way to help your attendees connect over a meal. You could even do it on the trade show floor. If you've set it up on the trade show floor, have the people staying there, eat together on that trade show floor, or send them out to the local community, right? And give money back to the local community for those restaurants. But I really do think this is a prime opportunity for we as meeting planners to help cure and help people who don't know anybody at your events matchmake. Okay. So another story that I wanted to share with you, this was from Food Dive, and it's a short story just kind of talking about some commodity crops due to climate change are hard to come by, which means the prices are going to go up. And so this person in here shared so commodities like coffee and cocoa and olive oil, make this a little bit bigger. Here we go, have had supply chain wounds in recent months. So we as meeting planners, we need to talk to our catering partners on pricing of some things. Can we swap things out to get better pricing because something may be low on commodity, or maybe a crop was destroyed that you were set on having eggplant at your event months before, but when it came to the time of the event, the chef needs to change it out because there's no more eggplants or something like that. So really thinking through this. But this Frank Jackshish, who's the CEO of Ina Bio, he was talking about getting more. There's some other products that are getting some more attention that are affected, other crops that are affected by climate change. Locust gum, bean gum, which you're not going to know on a daily basis, but lavender, which is used in a lot of drinks. Vanilla, the world supply has come from Madagascar, which is also where the cyclone Gaman flooded fields and stripped vanilla pods from their vines earlier this year. So thinking through these things is really important. And I thought this last piece down here was the lack of surplus, or the lack of having some of these crops. Even though it's a slow impact, it will come to slowly decline. But the broader impact surfacing is that they're now starting to see nutritional decline over fruits and vegetables and various plants. And so that really is a opportunity to try to source ingredients much closer to where your venue is happening or your event is happening. Starting to think about other regions beyond where these ingredients are historically found. Is somebody growing lavender in your local community? Actually, in La Dames d'Escoffier, my local chapter, there's a lavender farmer in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So she's growing lavender locally. So when I talk about sustainability wise, talking to local farmers, if there's something that you're really looking for, see if it's grown in that local community. And so because those locally grown fruits and vegetables have more nutritional value to them. They're more nutritionally dense. And so it gives us a really good push to really think through that. So talk to your food and beverage suppliers, caterers, find your local farmers that are doing different things, making what kind of ingredients can you use. So thanks to Food Dive for sharing that story. And then one thing on sustainability wise as well, this is from Cater Source. And let me make this bigger as well so you can see it. This is Carl Sachs, who is a frequent contributor and in the catering industry for Cater Source, and he's a speaker and a consultant, is the importance of operating a sustainable catering business. And I thought this was a great 2-piece article. It came out the first piece that I'm showing you here came out in May. And it is, as he says here, is perhaps the most important issue of our time. And we need as caterers. And so I thought this is really important to share with you. And meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And so that's the definition of sustainability. But through this article, and I will provide you guys all the links to all these stories here. And so this question here, where does the catering industry fit into the sustainability equation? Everyone needs to be fed, but not all agricultural outputs become, where did it go? Perspective on the impact of food service has rebounded. The catering by caterers industry represents 1.5% of $1.16 trillion, which is the food service industry, and has surpassed its pre-pandemic level of revenue, hitting $1.16 trillion in 2023. That's huge, right? That's how much money food service companies made in 2023. And while caterers represent 1.5% of that, catering by all providers represents 5% of that. That's a huge amount of money. So, and as Carl says here, a significant amount of food that has a substantial environmental impact. And I brought it up with my event in my keynote presentation on Sunday with Smart Meetings magazine. It's like, we need to be managing our food waste, right? That is one big way to do it. So thinking about it from the catering side, what are you doing with the scraps, the carrot peels, the potato peels, things like that? Are you utilizing those in a different way? Are you composting them or are you just throwing them in the trash? Because if you're throwing them in the trash, that's going to the landfill and that's bad for the environment. I can't think of the words for that. But, or the food that you're serving, it's been time and temperature controlled. You've prepared but unserved. Are you donating that to a local community-based organization that feeds people, right? We don't want the food to go to the landfill. So this is a really good article, 2-piece article by Carl that I will share with you. And I think I have when I go up here, I'll share both pieces with you for you to read. So those are my ripped from the headlines pieces for this month. And actually, I'm trying to do this monthly as well. But let me know your thoughts and let me know how I can help on managing your food and beverage, managing your food safety through food allergy labeling. I'm here as a culinary concierge, as a culinary consultant to help you provide a safer experience for your attendees, for your customers. And I don't want you to be a story ripped from the headlines. So until next week, stay safe and eat well, and bye.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.